Hi, my name is Leo King 1988. You may know me personally as David Morley. I'm here today to talk to you about setting up heat mats, setting the correct temperature on a stat, housing, caring and feeding, cleaning, bathing and mating and incubating leopard gecko eggs. The first thing I want to talk to you today about is setting up a heat mat properly with a stat. You must have a stat connected to your heat mat at all times, otherwise you may risk injuring your reptile. Right, this is the heat mat, this is the stat. You have a main supply on the stat, you have a sensor, and you also have the inlet to plug the heat mat into the stat. On the front of the stat you will find the dial, which is Fahrenheit and Celsius. I normally go by Fahrenheit. It's up to you which one you decide to choose. Literally you will plug the plug from the heat mat into the inlet on the stat like so. You will then set the desired temperature on the dial over here. This LED will come on and tell you that the heat mat's heating up. It will go out once the heat mat has reached the desired temperature, and then it will come back on once the heat mat drops below the desired temperature. This is the probe. This must lay over the top of the heat mat, otherwise you will not be getting a correct temperature. It will give you a false reading. So there's no point having the heat mat here and the probe over here because it's not getting the right temperature. Lay this over the top of the heat mat. I normally use some sellotape to sellotape it to the heat mat. This has never caused a fire or anything before, so it's perfectly safe. Like I said before, if you do not do this, you may risk the heat mat overheating, or you may bring risk to your reptile that you are keeping. Right, so that's that out of the way. I picked this book up at, you can get this at Pets at Home, or I have a pet store in my local town, where I got this. It's a very good read. I picked this up before I picked my leopard gecko up, and I read it cover to cover. So I knew exactly how to look after and care for my leopard gecko. A lot of people are buying reptiles on a whim and not knowing how to care for them. This is how a lot of reptiles get mistreated. Like you see a lot of reptiles with metabolic bone disorder. It's because these kind of reptiles need UV light, and people are not supplying UV light for these reptiles, and it's bringing them harm. So please be aware, do your research on these reptiles before you go out and purchase them. Right, so like I was saying, on this stat, if you are using Celsius, then you're going to go anywhere between 25 and 29. If you're using Fahrenheit, you're going to go anywhere between 76 and 80. So that's heating. Leopard geckos only need heat mats. They don't need overhead light. They are belly heat animals. For housing, I would recommend getting maybe a 2 to 3 foot if you're housing just one, a 3 to 4 foot vivarium or terrarium, whichever you choose, for housing more than one leopard gecko, because they do need floor space. They don't very often climb. Some leopard geckos do, but when I kept leopard geckos, they never climbed. They preferred the floor space to roam around. Leopard geckos are more active of a night time than during the day. They are nocturnal reptiles. They don't really need UV light, but a lot of speculation's gone on about leopard geckos literally having UV light. Apparently it prolongs their life. I kept several leopard geckos for about 2.5 years, and I never used the UV light, but it is down to personal preference. Right, caring and feeding for a leopard, like for a leopard gecko, feed them every day. Don't feed them too much because you will make them overweight and that is unhealthy for them. Normally what I'd do is I'd put, say, 5 to 6 crickets in my leopard gecko viv, because I was having a 2-to-1 ratio trio, so 2 females to 1 male. Leopard geckos are pretty easy to care for, as long as you get the heat right, and you must use a vitamin and calcium powder. There is a whole range of vitamins and calcium powders out there. I used this one, and I also used the T-Rex leopard gecko powder as well. Easiest way to do it is, obviously, when you get your bugs in a container, pour a fair amount of this stuff into the container and shake the container up and down so it covers the bugs in the calcium powder. So you won't need to have a calcium dish inside your vivarium to terrarium, whichever you choose. I found that when I was housing a trio, when my females got pregnant, they'd like to dig, and I kept my leopard geckos on cocoa fibre. It's good for them, they can ingest it and it will not bring them any harm. I don't recommend keeping leopard geckos on sand because they can get impaction and this could lead to death or other illnesses. So get your temperature right. You can use a standard light bulb to illuminate your viv, which is what I did. Like I said about feeding, feed them, put a few in there to start off with. If they eat them, they eat them. If they don't, just leave them in there. They'll probably hunt around later on that night for them if they're hungry still. With cleaning, I do like to use a reptile disinfectant because I don't want to bring any harm to my reptiles. So I do recommend going to your pet store and getting a animal-friendly disinfectant. So best thing that I did was, obviously I bought some tongs and just some cheap spoons. So when obviously the leopard geckos did their mess, I could just use either the tongs or I could scoop it out of a spoon, because you don't want to be constantly changing your substrate every week because they're messing in it. So the best thing to do is get yourself some cheap spoons, take their mess out, and then probably maybe twice a month completely clean the tank out, take all the substrate out, put some new stuff in. Bathing a leopard gecko, lukewarm water, don't put too much in because some leopard geckos do like to swim, some don't. So just try a small amount of water at first, just to give them a bath. If you don't feel comfortable bathing your leopard geckos, then I would suggest using a moss box or just a container like this, which is a regular food container. You can put, say, vermiculite in there and moisten that down so they could use that as a shed box, moss. I did start to use mop fibre that comes off of your average mop. Soak it in boiling hot water, just to make sure there's nothing attached to it, like any chemicals or anything like that. So basically you're boiling it, and then you take that out, empty that water out, boil it again. So you can't go wrong. I mean, I used an old CD container, I took the spindle out of the middle, screwed the lid on, put some mop material in there, and they absolutely loved it. My 2 females were using it as a nest box as well as a shed box. Right, mating and incubation, I do recommend getting more than 1 female to a male because she will get bullied. He will bite the back of her neck and pin her down to mate with her. So we're back for the second part of my video. Like I was saying, the male will pin the female down, and if you have more than 1 female in a tank, then it will stop that particular female getting bullied because the male will have choice. So he can go and mate with another female instead of pestering the same one all the time. It's quite natural for the male to grab hold of the back of the female's neck and pin her down when he wants, basically when he wants it. You will probably see like small tears on the back of her neck. Probably will look painful. Best thing that I can recommend is just lukewarm water and a Q-tip, and just clean up the bite marks on the back of her neck. She will heal, and after a couple of sheds you won't even notice the marks there anymore. So that's that. Another thing, some leopard geckos do like a lot of moisture in the tank, and some don't. So it is a bit of give and take. So just don't overdo it with the humidity in the tank, because you could give them RI, a respiratory infection, and you can make them quite sick, and they could probably die from it if you don't get them treated. I mean, I had my humidity set to, I don't know, 30 to 40 I had mine set to. But a lot of people say anywhere between 10 and 20. But if you find your leopard gecko like constantly lying in the water bowl or constantly in the moss box 24/7 and doesn't really like to come out, that is because your Bavarian or Terrarium is not humidity. There's not enough humidity there for it. So easiest thing to do, go and buy yourself a spray bottle. You can pick them up from your local Poundland or somewhere like that. Just spray the container down, spray over the leopard gecko. At first they'll probably be a little bit flinchy because they're not used to it. But my leopard geckos, when I used to spray them, they used to sit there and like lap up the water with their tongues. So they do get used to it, and they do enjoy being sprayed, especially on a hot summer's day, because obviously with the heat mat being on and the temperature outside, it's the stat will only pick up, obviously with the stat being over the top of the heat mat, it will only pick up the heat mat temperature. It won't pick up the environment temperature. So what you got to remember is, if you have a heat mat set on a pretty high heat for your reptiles, you've got to take into consideration the room temperature, and they're also in a wooden glass box. So it will warm up in there. So when it's hot outside in your house or your flat or wherever you live, it's quite hot and the humidity level drops because of the heat. You have to compensate for that. So just be aware, some leopard geckos will enjoy a spray with a water sprayer, and to have their tank sprayed. Another thing, when I used to keep my males, I used to keep them in Echo Tetra boxes, just a like black lid, clear container, about 1.5 foot long. What I used to do is I used to spray the kitchen roll. I used to put kitchen roll in the bottom of their box, and like help them shed and stuff. What I'd do is obviously spray the kitchen roll that was on the bottom of their tank that I was using as a substrate instead of anything else. Because one, it holds the moisture, two, it will help them shed. So again, totally down to you on that preference. Just see what your leopard gecko prefers. Well, I hope this video was helpful to you guys. Like I said, just be aware, please set heat mats up properly. Be aware, obviously, when we have, like, obviously we have summer and winter, just maybe turn your heat mats down a little bit in the height of the summer, because the heat mat will not notice, obviously, the temperature rise, because obviously it's only picking up the temperature from the probe which is over the heat mat. So just use your noodle. When it is really, really hot in your home, either open a window to let some air in, or just turn the heat mat down slightly. I mean, during the summer I don't tend to have heat mats on at all. I normally turn all my heat mats off, because I live in a top floor flat and this place gets like an oven in here. So I can have the window open and it doesn't help. So totally down to you guys, but I would recommend, obviously in the height of the summer, just turn the heat mat down just a little bit. But like I said, I hope this video was helpful, and good luck to everybody. Thanks very much. Bye bye.